liftoff and the clock has started.
Welcome to episode 8 of the Tesla Time Podcast, the UK Tesla Unofficial Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Winter, and on this week's show, we'll be sifting through the Q2 finance report. We'll be discussing all the latest and greatest from Monday's Q2 earnings call and hearing from the very top dogs at Tesla, namely Elon Musk, Zachary Kirkhorn, and Andrew Baglino. I've got a whole bunch of clips to play you, along with much more. Stick with me because it's that time again. It's Tesla time. Tesla time indeed. You join me on Friday, the 30th of July, and wow, what a week it's been. My laptop is fixed. My squeaky Tesla wheels have gone away. They've been fixed as well, but we have no time to talk about that this week. I've got a ton of Tesla-related content to share with you. I knew we were in for a beefy episode, and we certainly are. That is certainly the case. So, let me just give you a breakdown of what I call earnings week and what happens every quarter at Tesla. So what happens is Tesla release their earnings report on their website. So by the way, if you like your numbers, you can go onto tesla.com and you can find that report and you can delve into the numbers yourself. This is a 10-15 page document. It gives an overview of Q2 and not just the finances, and there's lots of tables on the finances, but it also gives you an overview of the products and where they're at in terms of their timelines. It gives you an overview of the factories. There's even photos of the current situation at the factories, along with a whole bunch more information. Then what happens is Tesla host an earnings call with their shareholders, and the senior execs at Tesla present this document and answer questions from the community. That call is going to be the meat of this episode. But before we jump into that, and I have loads of clips from the call, so you're going to hear from Elon and other members of the executive leadership team, let me just run through a couple of major takeaways from the report that was released at the start of this week. Now, firstly, I've done a list, right? So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, okay, I've got 5 points that I need to rattle through. Right, number 1, even though they had the best quarter in the company's history, it's clear that they did this during, extreme times, right? Firstly, severe part shortages, especially in transistors, which, by the way, is affecting the tech industry across the entire planet. My day job is within technology, and I see this every day as well. It's not just a Tesla problem. It's much broader than that. So, best quarter in the company's history, even though there's been severe part shortages, and they've had this best quarter without selling half of their kit bag, without selling the Model S and Model X, which is just outstanding. We know that they sold, I think, 1,900 globally, Model S's and X's, and we know that they're currently ramping up production of the Model S, and the Model X is coming soon. But to beat their records with just half of their portfolio, it is incredible. If we were living in a quote-unquote more normal world, Tesla would have done even better, which is just staggering to think about. The second thing that the report shows is that Tesla are sat on $16.2 billion worth of cash. Okay, so this is expendable income. This is money they can reinvest into infrastructure, recruitment, production, things like that. Now, this is down 600 million from last quarter, but as discussed, they're ramping up Model S production. They're building out Giga Texas and Giga Berlin. So, that's absolutely understandable. But still, $16 billion. So when I'm being, that grumpy guy howling at the moon around investment in superchargers and servicing, it's that pot of money that I'm talking about. It's that pot of money that I'm looking for Tesla to spend. Third thing I want to mention from the report is that for Shanghai Model 3 and Y, possible production amounts, they've added an open brackets. So let me just explain this. So within the report, there's a table, and the table shows what is the maximum product output of each product from each gigafactory. Now, for Shanghai, in the Q1 report, this was reported as 450,000 Model 3s and Ys. So they were basically saying, at Shanghai, at full tilt, we can produce 450,000 3s and Ys. Now, in the Q2 report, which came out this week, it's still 450k Model 3s and Ys, but it's got one of those more than symbols, crocodile symbols we call them, but I don't know what their official name is, which is interesting because what it's saying is we can produce over 450,000. And I wanted to point that out because maybe, just maybe, that's why they've opened up Model Y supply to certain regions within Europe. We discussed last week that their production plans for the European Model Y might be moving around a bit. It was still hearsay, it was still rumour, but this suggests potentially otherwise. Let's put a pin in that at the moment, as Elon will cover that later in the show. The fourth thing, 3680 cell production timelines. There's an update in the report on this, and let me quote that for you here. Quote, "We have successfully validated performance and lifetime of our 4680 cells produced at our Kato facility in California. We are nearing the end of manufacturing validation at Kato. Field quality and yield are at viable levels, and our focus is now on improving the 10% of manufacturing processes that currently bottleneck production output." End quote. So you're gonna hear a lot of Elon and his execs talking about when you're trying to mass produce something, whatever the slowest thing in that chain is, if you've got 10,000 things you've got to do to get a product out the door at the other end of the factory, whatever the slowest element of those 10,000 things will hold up the other 9,999 things. So that's what they're talking about here. Now, this is the quote I just read you. It's great to hear that basically what they've done is they've proven that the batteries work, and they do all the things that was mentioned in Battery Day. It's now about how do we best, most efficiently and cheaply mass produce these cells to the market. Now that's a huge update. That's going from, can it be done? Yes, it can be done. And now it's, okay, how do we do that? So that's absolutely huge. And finally, for my European listeners, the latest on Giga Berlin build out is as follows. Quote, "While our global production lines continue to run as fast as possible, European demand remains well above supply, resulting in growing wait times for delivery. We continue installing equipment, have begun testing tools, and are working as quickly as possible towards starting production in Berlin, while growing import volumes in the interim." End quote. Now, a couple of things to that quote. Firstly, that is the first time we've had an update on Giga Berlin that hasn't mentioned red tape or bureaucracy. And also, it just shows a major focus for Tesla, that Berlin is super important, which is so good to see. Now, the report has also attached photos of Giga Berlin, and the photos are really encouraging to see as well, because it's like, it's this huge building, ginormous building with this shiny machinery plugged in. And, things are just looking more and more likely that this is going to be pulled off, which is fantastic to see. Right. That's a 30,000 foot view of the earnings report. Like I say, the beef of this episode is going to be the earnings call. So let's jump into that next. Now, before I do that, let me just give you a couple of things to note before we get stuck in. First of all is the audio. So this audio that I'm going to play you, the clips I'm going to play you, this is directly captured from the call. So I do apologize if it's not world-class audio, but this is, a big online worldwide conference call. So, you'll just have to bear with it. There might be background noise on the call, and we'll get to that, and Elon will explain that actually. So just bear with the audio. Who are you going to hear speak? Okay, so Elon, obviously, but you're also going to hear the CFO of Tesla, Zachary Kirkhorn. By the way, because Tesla are Tesla, his official title is the Master of Coin. Don't ask, but that's there's a discussion for another day. And he's referred to as Zach. So if you hear Zach, then just think that's the money guy. The other person you're going to hear from a lot is Andrew Baglino, who his official title is VP of Powertrain and Energy Engineering. Right now at events, in particular Battery Day, Andrew is Elon's right-hand techie. He's referred to as Drew on the call. So if you hear Drew, just think battery techie. The layout of the call. So the call is hosted by an independent adjudicator, and he will give Elon some time for opening comments at the start of the call, and then they'll move forward to the shareholder questions to the Tesla executive leadership team. Right, without further ado, let's jump straight into it. As mentioned, the call starts with Elon's opening comments. This clip is about 10 minutes long. It's the longest clip I've got to play you today, but it's the CEO and it's the boss. So sit back, take a listen as Elon summarizes the state of Tesla Motors in Q2 2021.
Sure. So to recap, Q2 2021 was a record quarter on many levels. We achieved record production, deliveries, and surpassed over $1 billion in GAAP net income for the first time in Tesla history. I'd really like to congratulate everyone at Tesla for an amazing job. This is really an incredible milestone. It also seems that public sentiment towards EVs is at an inflection point. And at this point, I think almost everyone agrees that electric vehicles are the only way forward. Regarding supply chain, while we're making cars at full speed, the global chip shortage situation remains quite serious. For the rest of this year, our growth rate will be determined by the slowest part in our supply chain, which there are a wide range of chips that are at various times the slowest part in the supply chain. I mean, it's worth noting that if we had everything else, if we had vast numbers of vehicles and cells, we would not be able to make them. Everything except the chips, we wouldn't be able to make them. The chip supply is fundamentally the governing factor on our output. It is difficult for us to say how long this will last because we don't have. This is out of our control essentially. It does seem like it's getting better, but it's hard to predict. In fact, even achieving the output that we did achieve was only due to an immense effort from people within Tesla. We were able to substitute alternative chips and then write the firmware in a matter of weeks. It's not just a matter of swapping out a chip. You also have to rewrite the software. So it was an incredibly intense effort of finding new chips, writing new firmware, integrating with the vehicle, and testing in order to maintain production. And I'd also like to thank our suppliers who work with us. There've been many calls, midnight, 1 a.m., just with suppliers in resolving a lot of the shortages. So thanks very much to our suppliers. Let's see, in terms of Fsd Subscription, we were able to launch Full Self-Driving subscription last month, and we expect it to build slowly but then gather a lot of momentum over time. Obviously, we need to have the Full Self-Driving build widely available for it really to take off at a high rate, and we're making a lot of progress there. So, yeah, I think Fsd Subscription will be a significant factor probably next year. With regard to Giga Texas and Giga Berlin, we're actually doing this earnings call from Giga Texas, so we're in the factory right now doing this earnings call. And the team's made incredible progress here. You can see the pictures online, and see that there's basically nothing a year ago, and there's a mostly complete large factory a year later. So it's really great work by the Giga Texas team, and then also great work in Berlin, or Brandenburg, with the team there. So we expect to be producing the sort of new design of the Model Y in both factories in limited production later this year. We expect to be producing the sort of new design of the Model Y in both factories in limited production later this year. It's always like, it's hard to sort of explain to people who have not been through the agony of a manufacturing ramp, like, why can't you just turn it on and make, 5,000 a week? It is so hard to do manufacturing. It is so hard to do production. To first approximation, there are 10,000 unique parts and processes that have to work, and the rate of growth of production goes as fast as the least lucky and dumbest of those 10,000 things. And a bunch of them are not even in our control. So it's like, it's insanely difficult. I'm fond of saying that prototypes are easy and production is hard. And arguably the really remarkable thing that Tesla has done is not to make an electric car or to be a car startup, because there have been hundreds of car startups in the United States and outside the United States. So the thing that's remarkable is that Tesla didn't go bankrupt in reaching volume production. That's the amazing part, because everyone else did. Because they all thought the prototype or the idea was the hard part, and it is not. It is trivial by comparison with actual production. So it's always worth noting that of all the American car companies, there are only two that have not gone bankrupt, and that is Ford and Tesla. So, the seeds of defeat are sown on the day of victory, and we must be careful that we do not do that. So often, if you look at history, so often the seeds of defeat are sown on the day of victory. We will endeavor not to make that the case at Tesla. So let's see. The Model Y is in Texas and made in Texas and Berlin will look very much like the Model Ys we currently make, but there are substantial improvements in the difficulty of manufacturing. So, for example, the Model Y made here and in Berlin will have a cast front body and a cast rear body, whereas the one in California has a cast rear body but not a cast front body. We're also aiming to do a structural pack with 4680s cells, which is a mass reduction and a cost reduction. And but we're not counting on that as the only way to make things work. We have sort of a backup plan with a non-structural pack and 2170s essentially. So, but at scale production, we obviously want to be using 4680s and structural pack. From a physics standpoint, this is the best architecture, and from an economic standpoint, it is the lowest cost way to go. So the lightest, lowest cost. But there's a lot of new technology there, so it is difficult to predict with precision when does it work and when do you reach scale production. And Drew's going to talk a bit more about the 4680 production. So we are making great progress on the 4680 cells, but there is a tremendous amount of innovation that we're packing into that 4680 cell, and so it's not simply a sort of minor improvement on state-of-the-art. There are, and we went through this on the battery cell day, really dozens of, half a dozen major improvements and dozens of small improvements. So I think it will be great, but it's difficult to say when the last of the technical challenges will be solved. So in conclusion, our team continues to make huge efforts to make our factories run at full speed, which is very difficult. We have had some factory shutdowns due to part shortages, and we hope those will be relieved in the coming weeks and months. And we're making great progress on full self-driving. Some of the progress is not easy to see because it is at sort of a foundational software level. And so then it ends up being sort of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back situation. But over time, if you do 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and keep going, you do move forward. So I'm highly confident that the cars will be capable of full self-driving. If they have a full self-driving computer and the cameras, I'm confident that they will be able to drive themselves with a safety level substantially greater than that of the average person. Once again, thanks to all of our employees who are making this a breakthrough year for Tesla and an incredible quarter. Thanks, guys.
Elon reporting live there from Giga Texas. I mentioned that background noise. If you hear trucks beeping in the background, it's because Elon is actually at the factory, which is great to see. Also, on the earnings call, the audio cut out for about 90 seconds. And obviously, I didn't want 90 seconds of dead air on the podcast, so I've clipped that bit out. So you might hear a cut. You're not missing any content there. That is just because there was a technical issue on Tesla's end. So let's carve up what Elon's gone through there. So he starts by talking about part shortages and the global chip shortage in particular. Again, the fact that they've had this world-class record-beating Q2 with these hurdles in the way without being able to sell S's and X's is just staggering. Elon then talks about Fsd subscriptions. He mentions that the plan is to build slowly and gather momentum over time. He actually says, quote, Fsd subscriptions will ramp and be a key part of the strategy next year, end quote. Again, what he's doing there is he's tapering expectations. Elon has to be really careful on these shareholder meetings not to mislead anyone. He's probably got to be a little bit more conservative with his estimates and his timelines than he does on, say, Twitter, for example. And you can see that he's tapering expectations. We know that FSD Beta 10 will be coming soon. We know 11 will be coming after that. We know Beta 9 is with a small subset of Tesla customers right now in North America. So still a long way to go, but clearly going to be a key element of their strategy next year. Giga Texas and Giga Berlin was mentioned as well. So as I mentioned, he's hosting the call from Texas, but he confirmed, most importantly, that the new version Model Y is still on track for the end of the year. This is ginormous because obviously last week we discussed maybe Cybertruck might get the inside line on the race for release because of delays in Giga Berlin. This doesn't sound like it's the case from Elon here. So that's great to hear. Now, when he says new version, we're hoping he's meaning their next gen. And by next gen, I mean structural battery pack and 3680 cell battery pack too. Interesting that he said, quote, the seeds of defeat are sown on the day of victory, end quote. You know, Tesla are in a extremely fortunate, powerful position where their demand for their products is higher than the amount of products they can supply. It's the perfect situation to be in as a company, really. But they keep this kind of underdog mentality, this underdog ethos, and they're always trying to keep that, because what that does and why that's great is it drives innovation, it drives investment, it's a drive to do better. So it's great to see that Elon is not resting on his laurels and understands that there's still a long way to go. I mentioned that new version Model Y. Details around that cast front and rear body were mentioned. The structural battery pack was mentioned. But what was really interesting was that backup plan that he mentioned that's in place at Giga Texas and Giga Berlin. Could this mean that we might see the traditional Model Y come out of Giga Berlin first? We saw that the Plaid Plus Model S, I should say, got canned, and that was set to have those 3680 cells. Was that to give them more time? Was that to give them more resources to develop the 3680 cells for the Model Y? Perhaps the mountain is bigger and taller than Tesla thought. But Tesla are treading new ground here. You know, they're doing something that's never been done. This is groundbreaking technology. So, you know, let's give them some leeway there. Having said that, I've got it in. I haven't got it in any of the clips today, but the 36, just because there's so much to get through. But the 3680 cells are looking good from a reliability point of view. And Drew actually the technical guy, talks about how they've accrued around 1 million miles of testing on the 3680 battery pack, and the results are looking very positive. Don't forget, this was part of the master plan last year, the million-mile battery they talked about. Tesla are trying to get rid of the days of, I don't want that car because it's done 70,000 miles. Well, if the battery inside, the quote-unquote engine, is designed to do 1 million miles, then mileage on a car is less important. So it's great to hear from a reliability standpoint, the 3680 cells are looking good. Okay, a whole bunch of clips to do next. Let's move in. So Zachary Kirkhorn then took the mic. He's effectively the CFO. He talks a lot about the numbers. If you want to know more about the numbers, then by all means check out the report on Tesla.com. But net result is, it's all good, right? Tesla's growth margins have increased by 10%, even though the company is leaning heavily on its lower priced range of vehicles, the Y and the 3, which is a great sign. And now the S is becoming available at the end of the quarter, Q2. So that's only going to help bolster the numbers. And basically, they've got a whole bunch of cash and they're investing it heavily into their gigafactories and surrounding infrastructure. But details weren't really specified there by Zach. What happens then is they head into questions, okay? So the adjudicator takes the mic back and starts peppering the team with questions from the Tesla community and the Tesla shareholders. And the first question that came up was all around Cybertruck. Can we have an update on Cybertruck production? Let's take a listen.
The Cybertruck is currently in its alpha stages. We finished the basic engineering architecture of the vehicle. With the Cybertruck, we're redefining how the vehicle is being made. As Elon said, it carries much of the structural pack and large casting designs of the Model Y being built in Berlin and Austin. Obviously, those take priority over the Cybertruck, but we are moving into the beta phases of Cybertruck later this year, and we'll be looking to ramp that in production in Giga, Texas after Model Y is up and going.
Yeah, it's just worth reemphasizing that the extraordinary difficulty of ramping production of large manufactured items. At the risk of being repetitive, it's actually easy to make prototypes or sort of hand-built small volume production, but anything produced at high volume, which is really what's relevant here, is it's going to move as fast as the slowest of the, say, rough order of magnitude 10,000 unique parts and processes. And so you could have 9,999, but just one is missing. We were missing, for example, like a big struggle this quarter was the module that controls the airbags and the seat belts. And obviously you cannot ship a car without those. And that limited our production severely worldwide in Shanghai and in Fremont. So it wouldn't have mattered if we had 17 different car models because they all need the airbag module. So it's just irrelevant. In order for Cybertruck and Semi to scale to volume that's meaningful for customer deliveries, we've got to solve the chip shortage, or working with our suppliers. People sometimes say, "Why don't you just build a chip fab?" Okay, that would take us, even moving like lightning, 12 to 18 months. So it's not like you can just whip up a chip fab. It's just let's just make a quick chip fab. Some of these things are, anyway. It is quite a trial dealing with all of the constraints of scaling a large manufactured object. I think it may be the case that Tesla is scaling. I think we might be the fastest in history ever for scaling a large manufactured object. I think maybe the Model T would have been comparable back in the day, the Ford Model T. And probably the internet knows the answer, but I think we may be scaling a large manufactured object at the fastest rate in history, or I'd like to know who did it faster, so we can learn from them. So it's worth just noting that, in the grand scheme of things, it's not bad. So the Cybertruck and Semi actually both are heavy users of cell capacity. So we've got to make sure we have the cell capacity for those two vehicles, or it's kind of pointless. We can make a small number of vehicles, but the effective cost if you make a small number of vehicles is insane. Like they would literally cost $1 million a piece or more. There's a reason why you do things in volume production, which is to get the economies of scale that get the cost down. But we are looking at a pretty massive increase in cell availability next year. But it's not like in January 1. It comes through it ramps up through the course of next year. But even without Tesla's even without Tesla cell production, we believe our suppliers will be able to deliver about twice as much cell output in next year as this year. Drew, do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah. Given concerns over cells bottlenecking growth, our target is to grow cell supply ahead of the 50% year-on-year growth targets of the vehicle business, and also enable increased energy storage deployments.
Yeah.
Our cell suppliers are tracking to double their production in 2022.
It's great to get an update from the execs at Tesla on where the Cybertruck is. Net, they finished basic engineering and design. The focus now, much like the 3680 battery cells, is all around how do we bring it to production? How do we ramp that production level up to meet the incredible amount of pre-orders that they have. Currently, I think the number's set at around 1.2, 1.3 million pre-orders for the Cybertruck. I mean, even if they lost half of those pre-orders, that is still the highest pre-ordered vehicle Tesla have ever released. The market, especially in North America for trucks, is ginormous. The Ford F-150 has been the highest selling vehicle in the US for the last 5-10 years, something like that. So this is an untapped marketplace for Tesla. It's a brand new product. Elon talks about, that ease of creating a prototype versus the difficulty of ramping to full-scale production. However, him and Drew do talk about how they expect cell production to globally double in 2022, which is a fantastic sign that we might start to see the end of these product delays and this demand-supply skew taking place as we go through 2022. And Tesla, we need to take a nod at Tesla here because they've helped drive that focus shift from their suppliers into battery cell production. And this is just part of parcel of a marketplace that's shifting away from internal combustion engine vehicles to battery vehicles. And, without Tesla around, this shift would take a lot longer to go through. And of course, the Tesla Time podcast will be following the company throughout 2022 as they try and meet the incredible demand for the Cybertruck. Before I jump on to the next question, let's do a quick bit of myth busting. Myth busting for all my fellow Tesla owners out there who have had that cobalt myth laid at their door. You drive a Tesla, a battery powered car, they use so much cobalt, which, has so many negatives that come with it. Here's Elon on that.
There's sometimes misperception that Tesla uses a lot of cobalt, but we actually don't. Apple uses, I think, almost 100% cobalt in their batteries and cell phones and laptops, but Tesla uses no cobalt in the iron phosphate packs and almost none in the nickel-based chemistries. So on a weighted average basis, we might use 2% cobalt compared to, say, Apple's 100% cobalt.
I love how Elon will just happily give Apple a little jab in the ribs to make things more relatable. And actually, it's not the only jab he gives them, so watch out for the next one on that as well. So when that gets dropped on you next time, all you have to say is, hey, what phone have you got in your pocket? Listen, maybe I'm just being facetious there, but love a bit of myth busting as a Tesla owner, and I'm sure there's lots of Tesla owners listening to this kind of nodding as they kind of appreciate the feelings that we feel sometimes as people kind of, turn their nose up at our cars and go, well, they're not as good as you might think, But anyway, we've got a lot to get through, so allow me to just hop off of my soapbox here. Right, the next clip I want to play to you is Elon answering a question around opening up the superchargers to other EV manufacturers. And the question here was basically, just, you've mentioned it on Twitter. Can we have more details on this? We've talked a lot about this on the Tesla Time podcast, so let's see what Elon has to say.
Yeah, we're currently thinking it's a real simple thing where you just download the Tesla app and you go to a supercharger and you just indicate which stall you're in. So you plug in your car, even if it's not a Tesla, and then you just access the app and say, turn on the stall that I'm in for how much electricity. And this should basically work with, I think, almost any manufacturer's cars. There will be a time constraint. So if the charge rate is super slow, then somebody will be charged more because the biggest constraint at the superchargers is time. How occupied is the stall, and then we'll also be smarter with how we charge for electricity at the superchargers. So rush hour charging will be more expensive than off-hours charging because there are times when the superchargers are empty and times when they're jam-packed, and so it makes sense to have some time-based discrimination on
Yeah. We've been doing that, and it's been working, and people respond, and it helps with utilization.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think we're in Europe and China and most parts of the world. It's the same connector for everyone. So this is a fairly easy thing to do. Developed our own connector, which, in my opinion, is actually the best connector. It's small and light, and looks good. It's no standard. So we developed our own connector, which, in my opinion, is actually the best connector. It's small and light and looks good. So an adapter is needed to work for EVs in North America, but people can buy this adapter, and we anticipate having it available at the superchargers as well, if people don't sort of steal them or something.
We have a good solution for that.
Okay. That is just that's a constraint on the North American thing. Yeah. That's basically a vestige of history. But I think we do want to emphasize that it is our goal is to support the advent of sustainable energy. It is not to create a walled garden and use that to bludgeon our competitors, which is sometimes used by some companies.
I think it's also important to comment that increasing the utilization of the network actually reduces our costs, which allows us to lower charging prices for all customers, makes the network more profitable, allows us to grow the network faster. So it's a good thing there. And no matter what, we're going to continue to aggressively expand the network capacity, increasing charging speeds, improving the trip planning tools to protect against site congestion using dynamic pricing, as Elon mentioned. Yeah. And just continue to focus on minimum wait time for all customers.
Yeah, obviously, in order for this for the supercharger to be useful to other car companies' cars, we need to grow the network faster than we're growing vehicle output, which is not easy. We're growing vehicle output at a hell of a rate. So superchargers need to grow faster than vehicle output. So this is a lot of work for the supercharger team. But it is only useful in the grand scheme of things. It's only useful to the public if we're able to grow faster than Tesla vehicle output. So that is our goal.
Tesla supercharger network has to grow faster than our vehicle output. That is the exact sentence when Elon said that, that's our goal. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. You know what I'm like. I've moaned about infrastructure quite a bit, or not moaned, but I've just emphasized the fact that it has to be a focus area. Hearing Elon say that is just, it's nectar to me. It's golden. So that is fantastic to hear. I love that in the future, people are going to be forced to have the Tesla app on their phone. Again, a little bit facetious from me, but I followed Tesla for a long time. The fact that other human beings that are not in the Tesla ecosystem are going to have the Tesla app on their phone is, that just gives me a little bit of glee. Charged on time, so faster charging cars will be discriminated, as well as peak charge costs. So this is really important. Like I've said this before, it's all about getting vehicles out of charging bays as quickly as possible. So of course, if you're charged on time, that's going to be the best chance to get people moving on as quickly as possible. If you have a car which charges quickly, then you will save money. And currently, as it stands, no batteries in any cars are charging faster than Teslas. Elon hinted at it being easy in Europe. I've said this in the past as well, that we should expect this over here first. Elon seems to hint that it will be coming in the US, but through some sort of adapter. But obviously, there's still answers to be given to those questions around, who's selling that adapter. He mentions adapters being actually put in place at the superchargers, which will be interesting to see. I just assume that, Ford would sell you with the car. It would also come with a Tesla adapter, perhaps. But again, we'll have to wait and see. And Drew, the battery techie, talks about there being a new revenue stream here, which will in turn help with developing the infrastructure in general. Forbes has recently released a report, which will be coming out in the headlines next week on next week's show, basically suggesting that there's a lot of money to be had here. And I never really looked at it this way. If they're making more money, if it's a new revenue stream that can then be fed back into the infrastructure, then that's a good thing. So, hearing Elon's comments around superchargers being built quicker than cars, and Drew's comments around, don't forget, this is a new revenue stream that's currently untapped that will help develop the infrastructure in general, is fantastic to hear, and really quelled some of my concerns. Elon was then asked about attach rates for FSD. Take a listen to what you had to say here.
Yeah, it's not worth commenting on right now. It's not meaningful. We really need Full Self-Driving, at least the beta, to be widely available, so anyone who wants it can get it. Otherwise, it would be pointless to read anything into where things are right now.
I appreciate that Elon's answer here may seem a bit sharp, a bit pointy, a bit negative. But actually, I think it's a good answer. He's admitting that this is a beta product right now. It's not finished. So attach rates isn't really a focus. Once it's finished, you can bet your bottom dollar that this is going to be a huge focus area for Tesla. It's one of their 3 main priorities as a company. But right now, he's kind of parking that because he recognizes, and he wants the shareholders and Tesla customers to recognize, this is a beta. You do not need it right now, but one day you will. And in fact, on that note, take a listen to Elon giving his opinion on why FSD will rise over and above government regulations in our respective countries. The question here was all around, what if the governments of the countries that you're selling in say, no, we don't accept cars that drive themselves on our roads. Again, this is all part and parcel of treading new ground. Take a listen to what Elon has to say.
At least in the U.S., we don't see regulation as a fundamental limiter. We've obviously got to make it work and then demonstrate that the reliability is significantly in excess of the average human driver for it to be allowed, for people to be able to use it without paying attention to the road. But I think we have a massive fleet, so it will be, I think, straightforward to make the argument on statistical grounds, just based on the number of interventions, or especially interventions that would result in a crash at scale. We think we'll have billions of miles of travel to be able to show that it is, the safety of the car with the autopilot on is 100% or 200% or more safer than the average human driver. At that point, I think it would be unconscionable not to allow the autopilot, because the car just becomes way less safe. It'd be sort of like, if you take the elevator analogy, back in the day, you used to have elevator operators with like a big sort of switch that operate the elevator and move between floors. But that get tired or maybe drunk or something, or distracted, and every now and again somebody would be kind of shared in half between floors. That's kind of the situation we have with cars. Autonomy will become so safe that it will be unsafe to manually operate the car, relatively speaking. Today, obviously we just get in an elevator, we press the button for which floor we want, and it just takes us there safely. And it would be quite alarming if elevators were operated by a person with a giant switch.
Elon Musk, contrary to popular belief, is human, right? He has his flaws. He's not perfect. But one thing he does so well is he answers a serious question with a slightly informal, jovial point that still packs a punch. There's a lot of clever people on this call, and hearing a simple metaphor personally really helps me understand things. And I just thought that was great, and I wanted to share that with you because that elevator analogy is absolutely right. It does take time, but in all walks of life, we have learnt to trust and lean on technology, and the automotive industry and the automation within that industry is just, it's just one of another that's going to happen. Right, let's see. Yes, okay, Elon was asked this question. It's kind of a similar question, but in a different guise. So Elon was asked whether or not the subscription service that's rolling out in North America, which we reported on in episode 7 of Tesla Time Podcast last week, has resulted in a spike in FSD orders. And also why? Why did they settle on those monthly prices? $199 and then $99 for those with enhanced autopilot. Here's what Elon had to say on the matter.
Yeah, I mean, it's like any given price is going to be wrong, so we'll just adjust it over time as we see, the value proposition makes sense to people. So we're just really, I'm not thinking about this a lot right now. We need to make full self-driving work in order for it to be a compelling value proposition. Otherwise, people are, kind of betting on the future. I mean, right now, does it make sense for somebody to do an Fsd subscription? I think it's debatable. But once we have full self-driving widely deployed, then the value proposition will be clear. And at that point, I think basically everyone will use it. Or it could be a rare individual who doesn't.
Tesla are holding steady here. They're not telling you that your car will drive itself right now with FSD active, and they appreciate that in its current form it is just an aid to your driving. However, you'll notice there they do recognise in their opinion that they are leading in this autonomy space, and it's great to hear that they know that the price must remain flexible. It may, will and can change in the future, and I've talked about this before. But for me personally, in my humble opinion, it's all about jumping in at the right time. And that's just my opinion. So in summary, Elon recognises FSD is a bet for the future, which again is a nod to the fact in its current form, it is just in beta. Wow, okay, we are over the 48-minute mark now, so I'm going to begin to wrap things up. Thank you so much for everybody who's emailed into the show with your support. Honestly, you don't know how much it means. It's really amazing, so thank you so much. I really hope you enjoyed this kind of special bumper episode. I appreciate it was longer than I had hoped. But, there's so much talked about by Elon and the team that I wanted to get it all in here. And I think other than some, deep dive financials, which you can go onto Tesla.com and read in the report, I think I've been able, through the clips, I've been able to capture 99% of what was discussed on the earnings call. Let me know what you think of this episode. I'm looking to do one of these every quarter as and when the calls take place. So let me know what you think. You can contact me on teslatimepodcast@gmail.com. And of course, if you want to be on the show, if you want to be part of the show, then record your voice either on your phone, laptop or PC and send that voice recording in to teslatimepodcast@gmail.com. Perhaps you have a question around the world of Tesla or a general talk topic, whatever it might be. let me know and you can be on the show, which will be awesome. Thank you so much for listening. I'm going to carry the headlines over just because of time. I'm going to carry the headlines over to next week's show. As it stands, as of recording, nothing burning has taken place this week. So I'll be filling you in on all the news and gossip of the world of Tesla next week on episode 9. Thank you so much for listening. Stay safe, everybody. Peace.